Hello guys, today we're going to be learning about how to add and subtract integers using rules instead of models. We should have already learned how to use the number tiles in order to find them. We're now going to be practicing with just the math. So if you look at the first one, guys, if we're adding, there's two different possibilities. We might be adding same sign, or we might be adding different signs. So we're first going to go ahead and take a look at what happens when you're adding the same sign. So I gave you two examples. We have -5 plus -7, or 3 plus 2. Let's go ahead and look what we would do. If we're adding the same sign, we're going to be adding normally. And then we're going to make sure that we keep the sign of what it originally was. So for example, I have -5. Sorry, that should say -7. So -5 plus -7, I'm going to add normally. So that's going to equal 5 plus 7 gives me 12. And since I was adding negatives, I keep that negative. So that would be my answer to that one. And then I would do 3 plus 2. So again, just add normally. That would give me 5. And since they were both positives, this is a positive 5. Let's go ahead and take a look what happens when we add different signs. So when we had different signs, we need to subtract them as positives and take the sign of the biggest value. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I mean by that. Of the biggest absolute value, sorry. So let's take a look. Okay, we have -7 plus 2. Now, it said to subtract. So I'm going to pretend that this negative is not there. I'm going to pretend they're both positives, and I'm going to subtract them. So I'm going to do 7 minus 2, and I get 5. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. The rule told us to keep the sign of the largest absolute value. So if you remember, absolute value is basically the distance from 0. So we're changing any negative number into positive. So the absolute value of -7 is 7 because it's 7 spaces away from 0. The absolute value of 2 is 2. So in this case, the bigger number would be 7. Since the 7 was a negative, that's the sign that I want to keep. So basically here I have -7 plus 2, which is actually -5. Let's take a look at the second one. I have 8 plus -3. So again, the rule told me to change it to subtraction. So I actually want to know, what is 8 minus 3? Again, we are ignoring the sign, and we're just going to subtract as positive. So 8 minus 3 gives me 5. And then, again, I want to find the biggest absolute value. So I have the absolute value of 8 is 8. The absolute value of -3 is 3. So in this case, the biggest one is going to be 8. Therefore, since 8 is positive, I keep my answer as a positive. So my final answer would be 8 plus -3 is going to give me a positive 5. Now we don't actually need to write that plus. I'm just writing it for you guys to keep in mind that it is a positive. Let's take a look what happens when we're subtracting. If we're subtracting, same sign or different sign. So I gave you 4 different examples where we're subtracting 2 negatives, subtracting 2 positives, or subtracting 2 different signs. We're actually going to do the same rule. So even though same or different signs, we use the same rule. And the rule is going to be to copy, change the operation, and change the sign of the last one, and then follow addition rules, okay? So I'm going to show you that in 3 different steps. First, I'm going to do the copy. This is the one I'm going to copy down. So the first one, I just copy exactly as it is, positive or negative. Same thing over here. I'm going to copy just that 5. Then I'm going to change the operation. So that's my second step. Currently, this was being subtracted. Therefore, I'm going to change it to addition. Same thing over here. It was subtraction. I'm going to change it to addition. And then I am going to do my last step, which is to change the sign and follow the addition rules. So the sign of this last one is a -3. I'm going to change it to a +3. Over here I had a +10. I'm going to change it to a -10. And now I can do my final steps. So now, if you notice, I have -7 plus 3 and 5 plus -10. So I went ahead and copied these down again. Let's go ahead and finish the operation. We would now be using the rules for addition of positives and negatives. In this case, I'm adding two opposite signs. So if you remember, let's go ahead and look back at what my rule was. My rule for adding different signs was to subtract them as positive and then take the sign of the biggest absolute value. So let's go ahead and try that. So my first step is to change it to subtraction. So I'm going to do 7 minus 3, and this gives me 4. Now I want to take the sign of the biggest absolute value. So the absolute value of -7 is 7. The absolute value of 3 is 3. So whichever one is bigger of those is the one I'm going to use. In this case, the biggest number is 7 because 7 is bigger than 3. Therefore, I'm going to make my sign negative. So this is going to be -7 plus 3 is actually going to give me -4. Let's try this other one. 5 plus -10. Again, I change it to subtraction. So 5 minus 10. The difference between them is 5. And now I take the absolute value. If you notice, guys, I'm not writing -5 because all I want is what's the difference between them. They're 5 separated, so I just leave it like that, and I'm going to figure out the sign once I do the absolute value. So the absolute value of 5 is 5. The absolute value of -10 is 10. In this case, the bigger one is 10. And since 10 was a negative, I want to make sure that my answer is negative. So 5 plus -10, and my answer is -5. Okay, guys, now it's your turn to practice. So I want you to try these two problems, -3 plus 7 and 9 minus -11. Go ahead and pause the video, try it on your own, and in a little bit I'll give you the correct answer. Okay, guys, hopefully you got the correct answer. For the first one, -13 plus 7, you should have gotten -6. And then for the second one, we should have done the copy, change, and then change the sign. And that would have given us 9 plus 11. So your final answer should be 20. If you guys have any questions on these two problems, go ahead and jot them down. And make sure to ask me once you're done with the video to make sure that you understood the process.